pointing out that I should think about the aesthetic engagement criteria for this, because I think that one of the things that I was struck by today, even just watching, I was joking to Jody as you guys were rotating, I was like, I feel like an artist at a gallery opening, like I kind of keep inserting myself in inappropriate ways when you guys just want to read and look, and but that this is an artistic experience for them as well, and that I think that part of the reason that I do that is because I feel like it puts them at ease, you know, and that getting a chance to just, you know, play with Play-Doh is fun, you know, and drawing with smelly markers is fun, and it sort of positively disposes them to the whole task. But it would be interesting to look at how it gets at their understanding of themselves as artists too, because a lot of them say very confidently, I am terrible at art. I am not an artist. You know, and I would hate for them to model that for kids. That's lousy, you know? And I want them to, you know, adopt that sense of, you know, well, you might not have practiced as much as somebody who is exhibiting, but that doesn't mean that you are intrinsically at an you know, atomic level bad at art. So it would be good for me to think about for that, because I'm not familiar with those criteria at all.
This relates to the language, but it's a separate issue as well. It's the processing speed with which the classroom commences. And the students talked about your gesturing and the emotion that you evoked as helping them, but your ability to repeat, you know, and so I can imagine any of us in a new discipline with a lot of jargon, having similar struggles to keep up and to know what we're being asked to do. With writing assignments, you know, students have to decipher the assignment before they can then respond to it. So that might be something you could pick up in the future to talk about. That would affect all of us.
Yeah, you assumed that you had to repeat, whereas we often don't assume we have to repeat.
Right. I assume that I'm speaking in an unfamiliar language.
Sometimes students ask questions about vocabulary that just strikes me, because I'm thinking that's not my native language and I know it, and they don't. And I assume that they do, but then I have to just repeat and explain, and that's just something that I try to keep in mind, and that's what you did. You just kept repeating, and it's very important for different language.
To go back to a point that Tracy made, I think one of the things that was really important in terms of, I mean, I just love the class. It was I would love to get in the class. And I'm not an artist.
You haven't practiced.
But I was really struck by the importance of the active learning environment for the students, the community building that was going on in that environment. All of that was valued by the students here as well, you know. And so again, in response to Jody's question, one of the things that comes right back to me is some of the evaluations I had students do on a new class that I had taught a new age 150 class at this level. The thing that they really valued the most were the collaborative, active learning, because they learned about each other and each other's. We did some things with music. They learned about each other's taste in music. They learned about in a more sophisticated way about what went into that music. They did the same thing with literature. They did the same thing with history. So I think, to me, that's an important thing to keep in mind, particularly work at these beginning levels, is that they really value the fact that Desiree cares enough to create a learning environment that's engaging for them, and they get to know about each other and learn about each other through that learning environment. So I think that's another thing that we could take away from this.
And it's multi-sensory.
Yes.
You know what I also thought about the drawing? They were, you put them in situations when they have to choose, do they speak Spanish better or draw better? You know, when they have to choose if they're a better artist or Spanish speaker. So maybe they consider themselves not very good artists, but if they have to choose between just two, they might prefer to open up and make more drawings or create monsters, because they can do it better than speaking Spanish. So that's a better way of communicating for them. So that may be something that they recognize and decide that I'll better draw.
I was thinking actually at ED 210 might be a requirement for all students.
201, you mean?
Or this class, yeah.
Well, and
I
what's
mean, just
interesting
think
is
the benefit that they would get out of understanding that the people around them are, you know, well, I guess, you know, the idea of community in any classes, you're going to get that.
Right. Well, some of it is that ED 116 is a sort of understanding human differences class, and I've taught that for the first time this semester. And I'm going to be taking that class and sort of refining it over time as part of the anchor for our diversity strand. But one of the things that was funny and coincidental is that class is a 1-credit class that meets every other week. So the week after we did this and the follow-up, we had our class session for that class that focuses on language diversity issues, and Cheryl Slocum came in. But I have two students in my section of the class who are also in 201 with me. So when I asked them to go around, and one student who had me for 201 last semester, and many of those students will have me or somebody else in the fall. So it's really important that they don't spill the beans, because I don't want the other students to come to my class and be like, oh, is today the Spanish day? Oh, is today the Spanish day? Oh, because part of it is intentionally discomfiting them. And so I had to go around when students in 116 were talking about what are their experiences with language learning and second language learning and language diversity. I had to go up to Jenny and to Sheila and say, shh.
You could have Dina teach you Russian, and then you could do this whole thing in Russian.
Well, I've thought about that. I've thought about how cool it would be if I could do it in a language that more of the students really didn't know.
Yeah.
But if they're going to be in classroom, I mean, I've kind of gone back and forth because I think that there are there are fewer classrooms in which absolutely nobody speaks English, and more classrooms in which there's a real continuum. And so I think that, although I have thought about it, because Where the Wild Things Are is translated into almost everything. So if I could refine this kind of a la Japanese lesson study and script it out, then I could work with Dina to teach it in Russian, or work with the, Chinese. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I thought about it.
One of the
Though I have a native Chinese speaker.
cool things about the class, though, is that if you can kind of hope there's going to be one class expert, I think it does do, it kind of just shapes things in a way that they're not only seeing struggle, but they're also seeing how someone might excel in a different environment. So they automatically get both sides of that, and I think you'd lose, it's kind of a beautiful thing that happens, that you have a shifting of the power structure in the classroom.
Right.
So I think,
Well, and also that then if
It's
I
good.
all of a sudden on that day have somebody else teach it, then it abandons the whole trust.
Right,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
So I thought about it, and it's just something that I.
Crash
I
course.
think the language
Yeah.
faculty, though, should come in right at the end there and then talk about language programs that students could take if they wanted to.
Oh,
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Well, this might be a great piece for the faculty at large as a
Yeah.
conversation about our teaching our students.
Well, that's one of the reasons that, a small mini cohort of us this semester are making our faculty practices public is so that we can virtually visit each other's classrooms. Because there's certainly a lot of expertise here that we don't have as much access to as we'd like.
This also speaks to all the universal design principles, that idea of creating a learning environment where anybody can learn. And I bet that article that you gave them to read uses the strategies probably mirror the universal design principles in many ways.
I think they might predate that particular term, but yeah.
Right.
That's okay.
But certainly the philosophy is similar. I think one of the other things is that you notice I brought my charts today so that you can see them, but I hand draw them on purpose because that's another thing that I want to model for them, that they can make their own stuff. Because too many, I go to classrooms and just there's way too many prefab posters of a little kitten on a tree saying you can do it, hang in there. I'm just like, oh, no, make your own stuff,
Well, and one of your students made that point too, that you don't always have to wait for outside resources to help you. I thought that was even
Right. She's the
too,
paraprofessional,
yeah.
so she's actually very
Great point.
experienced in school politics, yeah. Yeah. Well, I know that we're.
I wanted to
Yeah.
say something. A couple of things that have spoken to me today I feel kind of strange because I'm turning away
You're
from
right, no, I'll go over
everybody
there.
and the camera's right there. So we're